Hi, everyone. This is Rose, and I'm here with Allie Zeck. Allie and I know each other through Kelly Brogan's Vital Mind Reset program. We're both coaches, health coaches, mental health coaches in that program and independently. If you want to reach Allie ever, you can friend her on Facebook. Her name is Allie, Alizeck, Zeck, Allie Zeck. It's a really cool name, by the way. And yep, you can friend her there, and here she is. Hi, Allie.
Hi, Rose.
How's it going? We were just talking a little bit, like right before I turned on the live about some of the challenges that we've had since coming off of meds. So this is both Allie also came off of meds. I think you were diagnosed with bipolar, correct?
One of many, yes.
Right.
Yeah, bipolar
Diagnoses, right.
Mm-hmm.
It's so funny because I'm doing a that thing for Kelly Brogan where she sending her all my health history, and I just pulled out a big stack of like papers or like notes from doctors all the way back from 1992. And I'm like, oh God, this is just, what is this? I mean, I was just so, like, such a victim and had no power of my life anymore. So basically, so I was diagnosed with also duly diagnosed, like depression, anxiety, and then among other things, I had like OCD, but only some symptoms of it. I had like I obsessed a lot, but I didn't have the compulsive part, things. It was many, many different things. Some doctors even thought maybe I had, I had PTSD. They said I might have had borderline personality, which they never truly diagnosed me. But the funny thing is I was threatened with that diagnosis. And that diagnosis is, like I was actually threatened by a doctor. Well, if I didn't know any better, I would diagnose you with borderline personality disorder. I was like, what? Is that like a threat? Because I had done something that wasn't compliant. Isn't that crazy? Anyway, so
it is now in
yeah.
hindsight looking back at it, but when you're in the midst of it and you are subconsciously, giving over your power to these societal and medical constructs that we have in our society that we follow, it really makes sense. You really are a victim of that system, but you don't know it until you get out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you don't. And a lot of what I'm grappling with now is kind of entering back into the world and trying to be like loving and accepting of everything going on. But there's just so much that I see where I'm just like, oh my God, that's exactly how I was 3 years ago. And we were saying, like, if I heard me talking now 3 years ago, I would be like, shut the fuck up, lady. And I was just saying that to you, like, get out of here. I'm not going to watch your channel. You're basically, fuck you. Who do you think you are? And now I see the people where I was like them, like sort of, where my beliefs were based in science. They were grounded, reality based. I believe this, and sort of like what everyone else was kind of doing, even financially, like following this financial, money trail or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, right? The retirement fund and all that stuff. I really believe that all of this was in place for us to, like, so we could be better people and all these things. And I realize now, I'm like, whoa, I had it all wrong. I really did. And now I'm looking at myself, that old Rose that used to think all these things, like, medication was science-based and psychiatry was science-based and all the whole medical field. And it just goes on and on. It's even like, with like astronomy, everything. I'm just like, we don't know anything. And I'm like, I didn't know jack shit. And I was actually quite belligerent with my beliefs. Like, no, this is it, searching the internet, looking for proof that kind of went along with my, these ideas.
Well, and I think that's what I am finding too, is that we all, have a story, and we all, want to hold on to that story, even at a subconscious level. because we feel like that story is what keeps us safe. And so as I'm learning, I'm not there yet, but as I'm learning to step into an observation, role of myself and other people, typically I can kind of tell, when someone's on a psychiatric medication, because they're just like I was. They are so, going to the death to defend the use of psychiatric medications. Or another one I hear is, my family has a history of mental illness. My mom has anxiety. My aunt had schizophrenia. So it's the story that we have created, and these social structures are supporting it, or they've created it for us, right? We're just buying into it. And so we are, it's a very reactive. And again, I'm saying that because I've been there, and I know
Right.
you have, to sit in that space and just basically defend this story that you're living in, because that's all you know.
Yeah.
And you don't know any way to get out of it. You don't even know that you need to get out of it. You know what I mean? It is who you are. And so you're going to defend that story.
Oh, totally. Which is where I was for many, many years. And now I'm like, oh, I can't even believe I defended that story. I'm like, sort of like, wow, what else, was I almost feel like I was sort of brainwashed in a way. And I hate to call it that, but, looking back, that I'm like, wow, I really was conditioned, like to my very core, to kind of, believe this, go along with this story, to serve this role in society. It's basically a role. I was given a role, and now I see it as being very conventional, very conformist. I thought, here's a funny thing. I actually believed at the time back then, and this is just 4 years ago, that I was a trailblazer, that I was a free thinker, that I was doing like what everyone else wasn't doing. And, I was sort of in a different class.
Well, that's what we do, though, because when we're in that story, right, when we're in that container, there's nowhere else for us to go. So we have to start creating different, paradigms within that story to make us feel okay in that story. It literally, I call it a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That we go down. It is literally an alternate. Clear. We have addiction running rampant in our country and in our world. And addiction is really using another substance, another person, something else to take us out of our conscious, right?
Yep.
We're using something to take us out of our conscious. It is the same thing with a psychiatric medication. It is no different, but it's become socially acceptable. It's become medicalized, and there are companies and people making billions of dollars on this. But because our limited thinking thinks that that's what we're supposed to do, we've bought into this system, then we're basically no different, and I've done it myself, than a heroin addict, than an alcoholic, using these drugs that are socially acceptable and even pushed onto us, because you know what that's like to have them pushed onto you.
Oh, yeah.
And to be shamed and guilted for not wanting to take your medication, right? If we don't take it, then we're not fitting in the system. But it is something that is taking us out of our consciousness. That's what those psychiatric drugs are doing. And Rose, you and I have the gift of not a lot of people, and I know you work with a lot of people that are currently on them, as do I. It's horrifying to watch. And not a lot of people get to have the gift of being on them, right? Going literally insane like you and I did, but then showing what we're really like. I'm 3 years off, you're 4 years off of everything. I actually am doing, it's a different world. My daughter told me last night, you're literally a different person than you were on those drugs. It's like a new being was created from that. So not a lot of people get that opportunity, because a lot of people, Rose, stay stuck on these drugs till the end of their lives. They kill themselves on them, or they are just, in psychiatric hospitals. They never get the ability, like you and I have, to come off of them and prove to ourselves that we never really needed them. Show what our life was like on them, show what it's like off of them, and that it is possible and they are not necessary at all.
Absolutely. So I do agree. It is a gift. It really, really is.
It is.
Like if even 5 years ago, if I went into my head there is no way I would have seen this happening for me. No way. I thought might happen, but with the inclusion of medication and psychiatry, I could not see my life with everything is brand new. It's like like I was rebirthed. Like it's like I just came out of the womb and I have to learn everything
Yeah.
over again. It's not just like, oh, I was on meds and off meds. It goes so much deeper. It's like even feeling, I actually have gone back to like, wow, I'm actually experiencing feelings that I would think was a toddler experiencing.
Yeah.
Sort of these sort of inner temper tantrums and, just not knowing what to do with my emotions. And I mean, that's just that's what it feels like. I went all the way back to like this, like to infancy almost, and had to.
You do. I can remember, cognitively, the drugs really, really did affect me. And I still think I suffer from that. I'm dealing with that to some extent. I have a hard time using computers. I have a really hard time, looking at electronics, things like that, I have to have someone come and help me. But there's a lot of different things that those drugs do to you. And when I'm working with my clients, the first thing that we have to identify for me when I'm working with them is I call it the point of impact. Tell me what you were doing when you were on these drugs. When you were put on the drugs, what was going on in your life? It may be something as simple as I just had, a baby 3 months earlier. I was depressed. I have a gentleman I'm working with right now that was going through a divorce.
Yeah.
He was very, grief stricken. His wife was having an affair. And we're going to these people, the system that we trust implicitly. We have put so much trust in them because they have degrees behind their names. And it's literally stages of grieving, or, someone pregnant, it's a hormonal imbalance that can be easily rectified, but we're putting them onto these drugs. So that's the first issue I look at. But then there's also the cognitive implications of coming off these drugs. We have physical symptoms of coming off of the drugs that people suffer for years from. But then again, we have the medical community denying them, right? I'm working with a lady right now whose whole family is denying that the effects of what she's going through are because of withdrawing from benzos, for 10 years that she was on.
Right.
And her family's telling her she needs to go, to the hospital. And it's just like, it is very much a tipping point, I think, in our culture, in our world, to show that these drugs are they haven't been out long enough, to understand the ramifications and for people to really see. And the example I love to use is lobotomies.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Lobotomies were the status quo at one time. That was the really big deal. Lobotomies, the Kennedy's daughter got one because that was the medical, thing to do back then for, mental illness. And there was no way anybody would do a lobotomy. And I do believe that at some point in our future, psychiatric drugs will be looked at as horrifically as lobotomies were.
Okay, I have to 100% agree with you. So basically, that's what it feels like when I look back on my time on psychiatric meds. It feels like I had a lobotomy. I didn't feel again, or I wasn't cognitively mature. I don't know if you want to call it mature, healthy enough to be seeing the world in very realistically at all until I came off the meds, and then it was sort of this slow healing that that I'm still healing from. Like you're saying, the cognitive damage was very, very real for me. The neurological damage, like if you touched my skin, it felt like somebody was hurting me. So it's almost like I had no like connection between, these normal things that we experience, like the feeling of touch and hunger. They were all lost for me, like because of the drugs doing that much damage. And it was like the frontal lobe was completely severed. It was
100%.
Yeah.
It is definitely a detachment between your brain and your body.
Yeah.
It is an altered perception that you live in. It like I said, it's a rabbit hole. And then as you're coming out of the rabbit hole, you have all these symptoms that keep popping up that are legitimate. But as you're struggling with them, you don't even know what you don't know yet. then everybody wants to point at you and say, oh, that's why you need to go back on the drugs.
Or,
That's why you should go back
or
on the
you
drugs.
go to the doctor and they're like, we're going to test you for Lyme disease, this, that, mercury poisoning, blah, 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 blah. Even functional medicine doctors do that. And it's like, you have to sort of explain to them. They don't even know what's happening. And right now we're having a little bit of publicity, you know, through a lot of what Kelly Brogan's doing. There's a couple doctors out there, the Mad in America website, and then Laura Delano single-handedly by herself, like trying to change the face of, you know, psychiatry, which is pretty impressive, I gotta say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and she's up against, you know, a really difficult audience there. I mean, she's actually going to talk to at psychiatry, you know, functions, events, whatever. Also, so there's a little bit of publicity, and then there's some wealthy people or people that matter, so to speak, that have had, you know, injury from the medications that are coming forward. So we get to hear their voices as well. But like me, like one of the disenfranchised people that was, you know, diagnosed mentally ill, what the fuck does she have to say? And why should I give, how is she credible? You know? And it's like, so not only do we get that from the doctors, like sort of like, you're not credible, you don't matter. But I also sort of came to believe that I wasn't credible and I didn't matter because I gave my power away, like 100%. I gave it away. And, you know, somebody watching this might be like, well, that was stupid. Why did you give your power away? I had no idea I was giving my power away. I thought I was actually
in your power.
Yes, in my power by taking the medication, by following, being compliant, by, you know, believing what everybody else believed in every area. You know, I was an atheist and, you know, all kinds of other things. I didn't believe in that religion and, you know, only, you know, I would never get brainwashed by Scientology or, you know, drink the Kool-Aid by Jim Jones, you know, but now I'm looking back and go, maybe I would have, you know?
Oh, I said that to somebody a couple of weeks ago. There's some naivete in me, and probably my ancestors. I know my daughter has the same thing, whatever you want to call it, but I definitely would have been one of those drinking the Kool-Aid at Jim Jones. Yeah, I call it cultable. I'm
Right.
very, very cultable. I'm very gullible. I'm very naive. I don't question when people tell me things. I take them at their word.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of
being mentally
right. Well, not only that, it's sort of like in the guise of being backed by science. Oh, well, there's scientific proof out there that says this is the way it is, you know, and it's like, oh, okay, you know, if there's a group of guys that all agreed on this, whatever it is, you know, and so basically so that means we all should believe it. But does it really mean that? It's like, who says that just because 5 guys agreed on some, you know, that, you know, cholesterol causes heart disease or whatever, now they're finding out that's not true at all. I mean, why should we believe it? I understand there are some things, of course, you don't go drinking, you know, gallons of grease and stuff. But I mean, you know, like even our common sense is kind of like, you don't even have common sense, sort of
right.
The whole, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have common sense. There has to be rules and laws in order for you to stay in line, you know? So all these laws are put into place, like no littering. It's like, well, you know what? Like, I wasn't going to litter anyway. It's almost like, you know what I mean? I'm just using that as an example. It's not a great one, but it's kind of like people think if there's no law stating that you're not supposed to do this, then people are just going to do it. And it's so not true. It really isn't. There's going to be a small percentage of people doing it, you know, and it's the same with the medical dogma. It's like, okay, let's tell these people not to do this thing or do this thing. And, you know, basically, and that's that, you know, it's like
it becomes the gospel for most people and most people not understanding. And we also have I'd say the majority of people, we grow up in dysfunctional households. We have a lot of ancestral wounds, a lot of generational trauma being passed down. And that is the filter that we see the world through. You know, when you are raised in trauma, that's the filter you see the rest of the world through. So you're going to be reactive. You're going to be a victim. You're going to be more than likely codependent. And it's very, very difficult, really, to recognize that, right? First of all, to even know there's a problem. The first thing is to admit there's a problem. And then once you recognize it, to get the help, get the guidance that you need to get out of it, and then do the work. Because that's really what it comes down to, as you know, is doing the work. And it's painful work, very, very painful to learn to sit with your pain, to even identify pain's coming in, right? I'm so accustomed to going unconscious, when the pain comes in and just distracting, doing something else. But when that pain comes in, to really actually, here it is. I actually, like you were saying earlier, I'm actually feeling that now. And then to learn to sit with it. And I call it transmute. That's what I try to do, is I try to take it, integrate it into my life, into me, and then transmute it, doing something good with it, using it for good, to kind of wrench something good back into the world energetically.
Yeah, that's a good, that's a good, because all these things that these feelings we have, oh my God, these feelings, they're not always pleasant, but there is something to them that has been protecting us in some way. Like all the feelings we have, they're there for a reason. We don't need to push them away. So we're saying, transmute them, change them, or see them differently, or define them differently, or express them differently. How do we do that? It takes a conversation with ourselves to do that. A very self-intimacy that I certainly did not have while I was on the meds. I mostly just felt depressed, or
because when you're on the meds, you're just usually doing, some type of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. Therapists don't, the majority of therapists, they don't get what it really means to heal.
Right.
A lot of them are not trauma informed at all. And like I said, I think the majority, and I know Kelly has said that, Kelly Brogan has said that 100% of her clients have some sort of trauma. And I can usually always, with my clients, I don't think I've ever had a client that hasn't had some type of either an event trauma or, chronic trauma through their lives, that they don't even recognize. And that was what a big turning point for me too in my healing process, was understanding what trauma and abuse really, really was. I had no clue that I had, grown up in trauma, or that I had been raised in trauma, or I had, been involved in trauma throughout my adult life. I didn't know, because I didn't have a concept of boundaries. And it's, again, that generational trauma. So, my theory on that is we attract what's familiar, not necessarily what's good or healthy for us. We go to what's familiar. So I was going to very familiar things in my life that were actually, very abusive.
Right.
So it's just it's a process of awakening, and it's hell. How do we make it out of it, Rose? It's very,
really,
very complicated.
It is very, very complicated, and the work that we've done is enormous. It is just, it never stops. It's wow. Because not only did we both, before I went on the medication, I had, trauma, very traumatic experience in my life. And then I was medicated, and the actual medication even caused more trauma.
Right.
Coming off of it and stuff. It was so painful that I had medical trauma, serious.
Oh, 100%. And you have trauma. Sorry, I've got to plug my phone in. I didn't quite have enough battery left.
Okay.
And then you also have trauma from the therapy, the psychiatrist, the industry, the mental health industry, telling you that you're mentally ill, telling you you'll need to be on these medications for the rest of your life. That in itself is very traumatic as well.
Oh, absolutely. So like I said, being threatened that I was going to be, diagnosed as borderline personality, to me, I was just the thought of it, I'm that's traumatic in itself, because that's basically, I'm saying 100%. That I'm somewhat a kind of a sociopath, in a
right.
I'm sort of, and I was wow, that was traumatic, just the guy saying that to me. And I was but the things that I was diagnosed with, you're never going to recover from this disease. You have to take these pills forever. You have to be, you can't, your expectations need to stay very low. I had to recover from all those messages. And to start with, I had very poor, low self-esteem, so I kind of it kind of went along with how I already felt about myself. It was very validating at the time. Like, oh, of course this is all true because I'm this sort of piece of shit anyway that grew up, or I don't really love myself. And I didn't understand any of that, none of it, until coming off the medication. But
Well, and again, it just feeds into that
yeah,
story, that we've been living in for so long, and it seems like at the time it makes sense that that's just what we need. I am bipolar. I actually diagnosed myself with borderline personality disorder, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. But yeah, I mean, I suffered immensely, a lot of abuse under therapists and psychiatrists. And it was funny because I even went in after I'd been with Kelly Brogan for 2 years, doing, somewhat well, actually pretty well. And she called the therapist, it was interesting, Rose, because I think I was going to her looking for validation, for her to admit what she was wrong, because she had told me for 20 years I needed, I was mentally ill, you'll need medication for the rest of your life. And she told, she called what I was doing with Kelly hokey. She said, are you still doing your hokey little, transformational? And it really, I'm past the anger point. I'm more in the, let's do something about it point. But it's very scary that there are people out there that hold so much power, for individuals that are keeping people really, really ill, very ill for the rest of their lives. And also not only ill, but in that guilt and shame mode or what's wrong with me. It's just, there's such a stigma behind it that was never necessary at all.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree. And it's not just the professionals, it's now our family members, our teachers, it's everybody. And it's sort of like there's something wrong with your kid. They need to go on meds. And, so you're dealing with that as well. Or your wife or your husband or, these very influential people in your life saying these things, like you were saying, the client that can't, that's, going through benzo withdrawal, who is now, basically fighting her family, like the family saying, you need to go on meds, of course. And then you're like, oh my God, it's everybody. And it's almost feels like me against the world sort of thing. And it's really actually really isolating and painful to come off the medication. It is. It's like,
Very. Well, and then you also, and I know probably, I know for sure in my case and many other people, you have the initial trauma, right? And that's, not taken care of. So for me, for sure, that was just reverberating underneath. And so when I started coming off of, the drugs, it was hell. I mean, it was absolute hell, just the biochemical part of coming out the drugs. But then I have this trauma that's underlying that I didn't really know I didn't even know it was there yet. So it's just it was like a cocktail of pain and confusion that I was going through. And everybody's pointing their hands at me and fingers at me saying, you're mentally ill. Go back on the medication. So it's, and actually my 2 drug withdrawals were both cold turkeys, off of both sets of drugs, because I just think I knew I couldn't do it. I knew there was something not right with them. I knew I couldn't take them anymore. I just physically couldn't put them into my mouth anymore.
I had the same experience. I physically could not put another dose into my system. And I knew that there might be some problems after coming off of it. But after, I was like, so everything in me was yelling no. Like, I've had enough. I'm done. And this is before I didn't see Kelly Brogan at this time. I was just at home in my apartment by myself. You know what I mean? Like, there was no, forums or anything. I was just like, no, I have to stop. It was like, so it was like pretty intuitive what, the initial change, but I did not really expect. It was shocking to me to go out into the world and hear people say, I thought people were going to listen, just like they were compliant with the like the doctors, like, as long as you're on your meds, you're a good girl. I didn't realize, like, as soon as you stop taking your meds, you're a bad girl. It's like, no, we don't support that. Well, my hands are tied. I can't do anything. There's something wrong with you. I never heard of, withdrawal from antidepressants or benzos, and which is a crock of shit. if you look into it, this is like a thing. And
Absolutely.
so it's like, it was very painful that this whole thing that I sort of believed in and looked at as my support sort of turned on me, including friends, family. What's wrong with you? Don't you have a chemical imbalance? All these things. And so it was quite difficult. And then on top of the trauma, the lobotomy, the brain injury, all this stuff, the physical pain I was in terrible physical pain for, almost 3 years. And it was like, wow, you're kind of just, by yourself in this like whirlwind of, I don't know. Like, seriously, it's like, I don't know if what I'm doing is,
Well, you're unconsciously unconscious. Like we don't even know what we don't know at that point.
right.
All we knew, you and I, was intuitively we couldn't take any more drugs.
Right.
But we are literally fighting a system that's very powerful in the world that we went up, we were rejecting, right?
Right.
And I do remember the shame and the guilt, because coming off those drugs is a bitch. I mean, that is not an easy thing to do, especially, when you cold turkey. And obviously I don't want to advocate, anybody cold turkeying medication. But it's not easy. So you're exactly right. That isolation, that loneliness, that am I doing the right thing? You feel literally insane while you're doing it. It's craziness. It's just absolute insanity.
I totally 100% agree. And the fact now I'm kind of like pretty self-assured that I wasn't the crazy one, that I was the crazy one. And going forward though, it's still extremely difficult to sort of step back into, because all those ideas are still there. All those beliefs, all those people out there, all those doctors, all this. I can't even go to a physician without him going, well, that's ridiculous. If I tell them like my history, they're like, I never heard of this, and it's just like, okay, dude, yeah, all right, whatever, roll my eyes and just give me some blood work. I'm just here for the blood work, and it's like, so it's really hard to sort of re-enter, like where, what it's destabilizing. I guess that's a good word. And I feel insecure at times. Like,
yeah, I mean, I definitely see that for sure. I did a lot of, and I'm still doing a lot of isolation. I kind of call it that I'm cocooning right now. I'm really trying to come into my consciousness, and step into an observation role of where I go unconscious. What dynamics, what triggers come into my life, that bring me into unconsciousness. And there are a lot of people, not to say that I'm better or worse than anybody out there, but there are a lot of people in our world, as was I, that are living in unconsciousness and don't realize it. I mean, I did it for 48 years. I'm 48, and I'm just now coming into learning what coming into consciousness feels like. It's very, very painful. It is not an easy process, but once you can, I think I was telling you earlier, I think I'm on the cusp of, the peaceful part of it, where I am learning to detach from old, things I attached to my whole life, to old stories that I had in my head. I'm learning to listen to that inner critic that comes into me. And, a lot of it's, I think, a lot of my ancestors that have pushed up down to me, or people that I've been in relationships with that have been abusive. And I'm learning to kind of cipher through that. I think we are all beautiful beings, that, are want to just live and be loved and feel that connection with another human being and with ourselves. But there's just so many layers of the generational trauma and people that didn't know any better, and people that lived an unconscious life. It just kind of like really slammed us up against a wall, especially when we're in empaths like you and I are. And I think a lot of people that are on psychiatric medications are typically going to be your more empathic people. We really pick up on, energies around us and the energies of other people. But it's very easy to be a dumping ground, for people to, dump their negative stuff, their unconsciousness onto me. So that's what I've been doing for a while now, is really, like I said, kind of isolating. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, you're isolating. Oh, that's so sad. You must have mental illness. No, I'm actually by choice, isolating myself to learn who I am. What am I about? What is it that I want in my life? And how can I best, heal myself so that I can go out and heal other people? Because I know that's what my mission here, that's why I came here and went through everything that I did.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of my isolating was my own choice. It was like
Absolutely.
I knew I needed to be very introspective and that I needed that time to heal. I didn't want the influence of, because I'm like a sponge. Like if I go out and if I see something that's upsetting, I bring it with me my whole day. It's like,
Absolutely.
so it's, I needed to sort of, uh, cocoon myself from that. And it was like I built a little cocoon and I was like, giving myself nutrients and, the things on the outside that I needed, just like you would get, like if you were an infant, like you just need.
And it's so funny going back to what you said a while ago. I can remember being so out of like learning who I am that I would literally I caught myself one day washing my hands and I was like, this is how we wash our hands. I mean, all this down to the infant level of,
Right.
integrating myself into this planet and into my body for the first time in my entire life. It was a very surreal, but really peaceful experience,
Yeah.
to go through it. It's nothing like the fear and pain that I've been living in my whole life. That's all I knew. That's
Oh
all I
my
knew.
God, the fear and the pain. That's so interesting that you say that. It was peaceful. So even though it was very painful, there was a peace to it. So I chose, like every day I would go for a walk in the woods. And like I chose that as this is my healing, place. You know what I mean? Whereas before it was just things were coming at me. And then to top it off, taking these pills that were further injuring me. Like I didn't know that they were actually causing more pain, but it was like a surreal peacefulness. And I think I guess that's a really good way to put it because a lot of people say it's depersonalization or, they feel disconnected, but really it is. It's like a surreal peacefulness. And you're like, something in you knows that you're on the right path. Like, absolutely. Like but then there's a little voice going, yeah, but everybody thinks you're crazy. And, like, who are you? And, like the sort of the what is it? Like, I wasn't very confident in my new choice. So I was afraid to sort of tell people about it
Well, there's really nobody that's done it.
right. Yeah.
Not a lot of people, if I get I'm a big anti-vaxxer. I mean, I don't believe in vaccination. I believe in choice, at least. If I have a nephew that was very normal until he got one of his, vaccinations. He's severely autistic now. We don't have people coming off of, vaccinations that can say, oh, look at me now. I'm normal now. I've been off of the vaccinations for 4 years and I'm living my life. I'm working. I'm contributing to society because they have, brain damage from it. But for someone like you and I, again, it's very unusual, Rose, to get out of that system, right? Get out of the system, first of all, of believing that you need the drugs, and then actually do the physical withdrawal from the drugs, and then come out healthy and not, permanently damaged. I fully believe everybody has that, ability, but it's a very long road. But there's a lot of systems you have to break free from, and mainstream society is going to judge you for trying to do that. They are going to judge you.
Oh, absolutely. So Shoshi and Sheila are watching, so you might want to say hi.
Hi, guys.
Saying that, this is a validating conversation for them, which it is. I think it's validating for a lot of people in the fact that, like they were going through the same thing I was. And there were no videos out there. I mean, the only video out there was yours and mine, basically do this thing. That's it. And I mean, it was.
And if I could tell people that, watch that video, because I have a lot of people reach out to me about that. That was like 6 months after I met Kelly. Literally, I am a new person. I do not take any type of medication. I don't take an Advil. I'm very into supplements, but I'll even say on the supplement front, I think I took like a 4 to 5 month break. I think I told you I took like a 4 to 5 month break off of any supplement.
Yeah.
I did not take any supplement because I catch a lot of my clients doing this where we have to find the perfect modality. We have to get the perfect supplement or the perfect, Reiki healer or the perfect, hypnotist or something. And I did that. I mean, I was doing acupuncture, trying all these different modalities. But at the end of the day, it is self-care. 100%. It is validating my experience. Yes, I was abused by a system. No, I did not need these drugs. No, everybody else in my family that is on them, that's their perspective. That's their journey. I know what my journey is. I know how I feel off of them. I know how I felt on them. But it is really just sitting in consciousness and coming into consciousness. And I feel like it's really difficult to do that. You can get there when you're on the drugs. You can reach out to your higher power and say, help me, show me the way, lead me into situations and people today that will help me begin to shift and out, off and out of these drugs. But it's all about staying in consciousness. And I'll even say that there is a difference because I used to disassociate a lot when I was on the drugs, a ton. Mm-hmm. And I really am beginning to see that now as a form of distraction too. Yes, it's a response to trauma, but I really saw that as were I to disassociate and kind of fantasize and get into my head right now, that would be me distracting. I could see that now. I would be leaving my consciousness and I would be going somewhere else. So I'm able to see that now. I wouldn't have been able to see that then. But so, my point is even those kind of things when you're coming in can be distractions where we basically are uncomfortable, right? And the power comes from staying in consciousness, getting those uncomfortable feelings through our body and learning to integrate them. And I call it, again, mine may be different. That's a different philosophy than some other people, but I try to transmute them. So if I have someone that's done something very cruel to me in my past, when that feeling, that trigger comes into my body, I will take it and I will say, it wasn't their enlightenment that caused it. It was my higher consciousness that called that situation into my life. And I'm going to take it, I'm going to change it in my body, I'm going to reassign value and meaning to it, and I'm going to go do something good and energetically put something good. So something bad comes in, I energetically push something good out to the world. Oh, and that's how I think we do this.
Wow, that's amazing. So that's really interesting that you say that because it's almost like the victimhood mentality is gone. You're flipping it onto its back, and it's like, no,
it's gone. And that's, I mean, I'm in the process of writing a book about my experience, and I want to write 2 books. I really do, Rose, because I want to write a book about from a victim perspective, because everybody could, these, MFs did this to me, and they did that, and this is bullshit, and, this and that. And then I want to write a book from my new perspective of, wow, what an experience. What an experience for me to go through what I went through. Yes, they had limited consciousness. They had limited understanding. I accept that that's where they were in their journey. And here's what I've been able to do, though, through my journey and transmuting all of this pain. So it really is. I'm shifting consciously from that victim perspective. It's really interesting. If you go on Twitter, I just got back on Twitter not very long ago. And it's very, very interesting to watch the benzodiazepine forums and the this SSRI forums. They are literally they remind me of myself 3 years ago. I mean, I had a bullhorn. I think I blew it in Kelly's ear. I was like, we got to let people know, what's going on. This is insanity. This is injustice. And people are only able to meet you at their level of consciousness. And that's what I'm learning to accept is, some people are not ready for this message yet. But those that are watching, if you are watching this right now, you are. I will tell you right now, you are. There wouldn't be a reason why you wouldn't be watching it if you weren't.
Absolutely, Allie, that is so true. There would not be a reason. It's like, I believe that too. Like everything gets put in your path and it's like, it's up to you, the human, the person with the power to either say yes or no. And yes. even the whole system of psychiatry, I said yes to it. I invited it into my life. I manifested it, everything. I am 100% responsible. Yeah. And I even remember, I can see, looking back when I was in my 20s, how I manifested it. Like I did. I wanted somebody to tell me what to do, to tell me
Yep.
how to live my life, because I never had that. And I got it in the form of this, this medical paradigm, which is fine. And I think a lot of people are going through the same thing. And I understand that because we live in a very, very unsettling, times. I mean, it's like there's no connection with humanity anymore. We live in a time where it's like we all live in separate houses, and we don't hold hands, we don't hug, we don't talk to our neighbors. There's a lot of things. There's a disconnect in our culture, in our world. And
Well, I liken it to everybody is just living in unconsciously.
yeah,
Everyone is very, very much unconscious. And when those painful feelings, and I call it, your wounded inner child, they start bubbling up, they get uncomfortable. People don't know what they are, and they certainly don't know how to process them because most therapists don't understand this. We're not teaching this in schools or anything like that. But when those feelings come up, we immediately, it's like a subconscious, we go drink, we go do drugs, we go drink coffee, we go smoke, we disassociate like I was doing, anything to avoid that pain, because we are not taught the framework for processing it. We don't understand what it looks like. So how can when I was raised in trauma, my mom and dad were raised in trauma, am I going to go back 8 generations and pull someone's hair and say, you're an asshole because you did this to us? You know what I mean? Like, nobody knew how to fix it. And I feel like at this point in our world, there is a generation, and I think this is it. It is our generation and our children's generation that have been called forward to break these generational bonds that have held people captive. And so it's you and I and people like us coming into this process of awakening and understanding what I do. When I open my mouth, I create my future. That's how big of a deal, what I put out into the world energetically and how it comes back to me.
okay, I have to 100% agree with you on that as well, because I do believe that every single thing that we do, every action
Absolutely.
is huge. It is.
Yes.
It's not just, I did this little thing, who cares? It's not like that. And I never really understood the importance of every little thing I did, every feeling I had, every way that I expressed to the people around me, every connection I have when I go out on the street. I mean, all those things, the way I project myself on YouTube, whatever, they are super, super important. It is not just like, oh yeah, whatever.
Well, and that would be someone, if someone said, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal that I did that. That would be somebody in their story, right, that is uncomfortable, doesn't want to come out of their story. So when we want to stay in that safety place, we will find any way to rationalize, what we're doing. If you're not drinking, the first person that's going to come up to you and say, why aren't you drinking, is more than likely going to be an active alcoholic, because in their story, right, everybody, that's a problem with them, but they don't want to look at that, so they'll shove it back to you. So it's just interesting watching how energetically we all work amongst ourselves.
Oh yeah, we validate each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's why we're here on this earth. That's why, we all validate each other. So when you're in a certain belief system, you're going to find people just like you to validate that, and it's going to perpetuate itself.
Yeah.
Like you're manifesting something just by believing it. That's it. I mean, it's huge. It's way bigger than you think. It's not just like, oh, this is my little personal belief or whatever. No, it's huge. It's like it's being impacted. It has a ripple effect.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, that's like one of my wishes is like people could just see like how important every single little thing they do is, because most people, they don't give themselves enough credit. Like they can make huge changes just by changing something at home, like just by changing a little aspect of the way they live or the way they take care of themselves, or, just doing self-care has a ripple effect.
Well, I want to focus on one thing too, because I am dealing with a lot of people, and a lot of people, I'm sure that are watching are coming off of psych drugs. And that's a great point that you make. When you are trying to come off of, when you've made the decision, right, energetically, these no longer serve me. I've seen enough people, I've seen enough roses, I've seen enough alleys. I followed Kelly Brogan, Peter Bregan. I understand what this is about. I'm choosing energetically to come off of them. It really, for me, with my clients, becomes a process of manifesting then, right? Because the real world is not going to give you the support or the credit that you need. So it really, to me, becomes energetically about manifesting please show me people, situation, things to help me, validate and to help me come off of these drugs. And it is about, to me, you heal that in the quantum field, where we are basically setting, I call it a red string. I would throw a red string into the future when I was on the drugs, and I would basically just try to follow it. I'm sending breadcrumbs. I know somebody, my future self, sent me breadcrumbs, and I'm following that red, rope to get to where I need to go, because it is such an overwhelming conscious crisis. It's a biochemical rape of your brain.
Yeah.
That you can't think your way out of it. It's impossible. So to me, it's healed at the quantum level, at the spiritual level, and it's all about manifestation and visualization for me. That's what I tell my clients that I work with.
Oh, wow. That's really moving. That really is this sort of the biological rape that you said. It is exactly like that. It's sort of like the lobotomy or the rape or whatever. It really, really is. And it's like every pill that I took was a re-injury, a re-injury, a re-injury. And I mean, it had such a deep, profound effect that I can't even explain to you. You're much better, more like you're articulate about the process of what happened, your metaphors and everything. I still can't really explain it.
We don't have the lexicon. I'll be honest. I was talking to somebody about that the other day. We do not have the words in our lexicon to really convey what that experience feels like.
No,
we don't.
Yeah,
They're not
don't.
there.
We absolutely
and unless
don't.
you have been through it, right? Like you and I know on a soul level,
right,
Rose, what it felt like for you as you do for me. Unless you've gone through it, you have no clue.
No.
It cannot be communicated to somebody else.
Even if you're currently in the state on the drugs, you have no idea, none whatsoever. I am, like you're saying, I am a completely different person, even from that Kelly Brogan video. I mean, in that video, I was just a year in or something. I was a wreck.
That's what I know. That's why she used mine for, got a lot of people, which is amazing. And that's the way I think the universe works. But I'm like, holy shit. Like, I am like, not even, who is that person?
Right.
I'm like a different person to me now, but it's all part of the healing. It is part of the process. But I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I tell the same people, they're like, you said in the video you didn't have depression. I'm like, I wasn't
that wasn't me. I don't know who that was.
I didn't have like clinical depression, but that didn't, I was completely out of my mind still, like just really healing, like in it, in that state.
To me, you and I, at that point, I call it, and we were still unconsciously unconscious.
Yeah.
We were off the drugs, right? But we didn't know what we'd actually been through.
No.
We had no clue and no way to communicate it because we didn't know.
There was no vocabulary for it. I knew it hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even that, I didn't want to scare anybody. So I was very careful with my words because I was afraid I was going to scare people into not doing it. And because even at that time, I knew this was the best decision I had ever made.
Right.
I knew that. Like, I knew that. I didn't know why. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had I couldn't verbalize or articulate what was going on, but I knew this was the greatest accomplishment of my life. I knew that,
And thereby the greatest opportunity for you to help other people.
Exactly.
That's what I love about it.
That's what it was. It was like, yes, I'll share this story, even though I can't explain anything.
I don't really know what happened, but hey guys, listen.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I think it is, like you're saying, we don't have the lexicon, and that's why I have been sort of having these chats with people, because you can't explain this in 1 hour sitting. You can't. And it's like, I want to hear from a lot of different people, and I want to share this with the world. I really do. I think it's that important. I really, really do. Like, it's like, this is like, I have to do this. I just have to,
Oh, 100%. And that's your mission. I mean, that's why, you are so gifted. And I believe that's why you and I, we're here, we're born, we're created, and why we went through what we went through. We are transmuting that pain that we went through into, bringing light and helping other people with it, with our stories. And it's amazing. Again, that stigma's still there because I shared with someone yesterday and they were like, oh my gosh, thanks for sharing. And I was like he was kind of embarrassed for me. I'm like, there's no shame around my story.
Right.
It's a very freeing feeling, to have complete transparency with your life, and what you're doing with it.
Yeah. And not only that, I also, when I share my story now, I actually believe that I am doing something sacred. Like, this is a sacred thing I'm doing with you. I'm sharing my story. It's that important. It is like everybody should be like, lighting candles and shit, because it's like I'm opening the gates of heaven here, of soul, you know what I mean? And
well, what these drugs have done, and the system, right, that set them up, is they've kind of just really tapped into the collective consciousness of the universe.
Yeah.
So now they're part of the consciousness, right? They are part of the consciousness. It's mainstream. People don't question it. People support it implicitly. And I feel like that's what people like you and I are doing, or we are energetically tapping into the collective consciousness and working to transform it and change it for good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've almost been going an hour, and I know you have another appointment. So, but I am like, this was right here talking to you is sacred to me. Like, this is a sacred time. It really is. Every time I speak with somebody now, I'm like, I want to thank you for opening yourself up and sharing your sacredness, your treasure with me, because you're a true treasure, Allie. You really are. You're doing so much for everybody, and I'm just really proud to know you. I really am. And like you were saying, we attracted each other into our lives because we're on this path, and we're manifesting, and putting ourselves out there. And I know you're doing the work. I really do. And it has been amazing to see you blossom, to see you fly.
Oh God, yeah, that old video needs to go. She needs to shove that somewhere.
I was gonna tell her, I'm like, can we do another video together? Because I'm like, yeah.
So there's definitely no accident why we're talking.
Yeah, I know. So I would love to have you on again for a live chat. And everybody, you can find Allie at Allie Zeck, not Allie Zeck, Allie Zeck on Facebook. So just do a Facebook search, and obviously you're on Twitter as well. What's your handle on Twitter?
Just Allie Beck Zeck. My maiden name was Beck, Beckzeck.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
So don't hang up. I'm going to end the live. Bye, everyone. There's some people watching. So do you want to say anything before we hang up?
No, I just keep at it.
Okay.
Stay with the process.
All right. So don't hang up. I'm going to finish now. End broadcast.